Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cozy Cabin. So in this video I'm going to actually talk about our solar setup and how it's all hooked up and the type of equipment that we have installed here. So talk a little bit about our charge controller as well as our inverter and just the other little pieces of equipment that make everything work, and then I'll probably finish it off talking about our batteries. So this is what we have here. So we have the FlexMax Outback Power 80 amp charge controller. As you can see right now, it's not putting out very much juice because it's been rainy and really dreary and dark for the last couple of days. But typically what we have here is our input coming in from the panels right now. So as you can see, we're only getting like 90 watts, which is pretty much nothing. And today in total we have gathered about 300 watts from the solar panels. So they're in bulk mode right now, so we're charging the batteries. Actually, we're cheating a little bit simply because the last couple of days we had bad weather, so not much charging has been going on. So I've depleted the batteries, so right now the generator's running and it's charging. So you can see yesterday we were in absorb for about 3 hours and 26 minutes, and we got a total of 4.1 kilowatt hours. So yesterday was a little bit better. It was kind of on and off sun, but today it's just been total bust as far as sunshine goes. So this thing, you can kind of go through the history, and goes back I think like 120 days. So as you can see, 8 days ago was also probably a cloudy day, because 1.7 kilowatt hours is what we accumulated. Didn't even go into absorb mode. Yeah, so that's our charge controller. That wasn't the password, by the way. It just kicks you out. This thing here, it's actually kind of a remaining portion from an old charge controller that was installed, which is this guy here. It's a Solar Boost 3048, and this one does 24 or 48 volts. And it's still here, it works, but it's not hooked up because obviously the FlexMax from Outback is a lot more efficient. And this here is the main disconnect switch, so this actually disconnects the batteries from the inverter. This was also here when we bought the cabin. I just left it intact. I mean, it works, does what it's supposed to do, shuts off the batteries and so forth. So so that old charge controller kind of worked with this little remote display. It's hooked up, it works. I just left it intact. And then I have this midnight state of charge meter. Just shows you the state of charge of the batteries. It lies a little bit, so it really shows you the state of charge like now, but if any device is drawing a lot of power, this obviously drops quite a bit. Like sometimes it'll even go down to 50 when our well pump kicks in. So it doesn't really tell you the full story, the full picture, but it gives you a general sense of what the batteries are like, because once the device kicks off, then the lights will kind of move back to sort of what the state of charge is without load on the batteries. So I don't really follow it 100%, but more just as a general guide of what the batteries, or how the batteries are doing. The one nice thing is it will actually tell you. So sometimes when we're not around for a few days, this will tell me kind of the history of whether or not the battery's got a full charge. So they have to hit a certain voltage in order to be considered as fully charged. So if they're not hitting that voltage, then the light will drop. If it hasn't happened in a week, for example, things of that nature. So you know, from that perspective, it's kind of useful. This little doohickey here, so this is a DC breaker. I probably touched on this in one of my other videos. So this basically, it's a 63 amp. I don't know why it's such a weird number. But this breaker is connected to the combiner box on the solar array. So this basically, you know, if for some reason the solar panels would be sending out too much voltage, then this breaker will trip and cut the power from the solar panels to the charge controller. So you can see this wire here goes right into the charge controller, and then behind, I believe through this wire here, these are the cables that are coming directly from the solar panels. They go into the charge to the breaker, and then from the breaker it goes to the charge controller. From charge controller, these wires go out to the batteries to charge the batteries. And then these thick cables here, which are, I believe, the 40 gauge, so really thick copper wires. Those wires come from the batteries. They go through here into this battery disconnect, and then from there they go into the inverter. And then finally, this fuse, sorry, the solar panels go into this shut-off switch. So this is just like an on-off shut-off switch, and then from this we go into here. Forgot to mention that piece, but yeah, this is just like a power disconnect for the solar panels. In case you're wondering, this box here, so this is a step-up transformer. So this just converts power from 110 to 220 volts, or 220 to 40. And what this is for is our well pump. So our well pump runs on 240 volts. So this is just a step-up transformer that converts to 240 so the well pump can run. Okay, moving on. So this is our inverter. Let me just brighten that up a little. So it's, I know it's upside down, but that's the Samlex Power 4000 watt 24 volts, because we're running 24 volts at the cabin. 4000 watt. I think the surge is like 8000 watts or something. And it's also a charger as well. So that's the Evo 4024. And this is just a kind of remote little module for it. So that basically just gives you a display of, you know, what it's doing and so forth. So right now we're charging because the generator is actually hooked right into this unit. So what that does is it does a bypass, so it actually powers the cabin from the generator, but at the same time it is also charging the batteries. So again, just kind of going through these, I don't know if you guys can see, going through these settings, you can see what's happening. So the input from the generator is right now 12.5 amps. But you know, kind of jumps up and down, but like 1400 watts we're pulling. And the output right now is 100, jumps around. There's a bunch of stuff running, but we're also charging. So, but yeah, it gives you the state of charge of the batteries. So the batteries are right now at 30.8 volts. And we're pushing about 35 amps into the batteries. So you can configure that, how much you want to use for charging. As you can see, the CV, it's really bright. Let me just turn it down a bit. So charging CV means we're actually in absorb mode right now. So the batteries are about 80%, but yeah, so this unit has actually been working out really well. I know it's maybe not as fancy as some of the other inverters like the Schneider or what was the other one, Magnum. I actually wanted to buy a Magnum charge controller, sorry, not charge controller, Magnum inverter, but at the time they were pretty expensive. Like they're almost $1,000 more than this unit, and they also weren't available for purchase. So I ended up going with the Samlex. I read a bunch of reviews on it. There's a lot of good reviews. So um, it's been it's been working really well. Only complaint, I guess, for me would be it's a little bit noisy, but I mean those are just the cooling fans. So right now, obviously, there's a lot of power going to it from the generator to charge it up. So it needs to cool itself down, and I also have it kind of tucked away in the cabinet just to um, reduce some of the noise that is coming out from this guy. But that's really the only complaint I have. Other than that, it's been solid. It's been running great. Powers everything we need at the cabin, and I know our well pump takes probably about 12 to 13 amps on AC. And like I said, it requires the step-up transformer to run on 240 volts. So this thing handles it no problem, along with other things running at the cabin. So it's been solid. One other thing I want to mention. So yeah, so I mean this is all the solar stuff, and then from the inverter we have a connection into this electrical panel. So basically all of our connections run here, and then this just distributes the power through the entire cabin. So this actually wasn't here when we bought it. It was just like an old screw-in fuse box. So we replaced this with a proper breaker panel. And there is one plug here, and you can see. So this is actually a direct connect from the generator, which is in another building. So if for some reason we need to shut the system down, or something doesn't work, or we need to do maintenance or whatnot, then I can basically disconnect this whole place, and then I just have this outlet connected directly to the generator, which I can then use for like emergency power. Just run a extension cord or something and power any required appliances or things within the cabin. So a bit of a redundancy there built into the system. So that's the setup inside. I'm gonna head on outside and talk a little bit about the batteries as well as the solar panels, and I think that's gonna be it for this video. So stay tuned, and we'll head on outside. All right, so we're outside. As you can see, the weather sucks. It's raining and it's kind of cold. But yeah, in terms of our solar panels, so we have 6 Hanwha Q-cell solar panels. They're 370 watts each, so just over 2200 watts in total. Now, of course, that's just the lab. Those are the lab specs. In reality, the most I've seen these guys put out was about 1900 watts. That's like peak summertime, sun directly hitting them, which, I mean, it's still plenty. It's enough to charge the batteries. They're sitting on this pole here that's, I don't know, 20 feet high or so. Maybe a little bit less, 15 feet. There is an actuator arm on there, which I think the motor burnt out, so it's not working right now. I was going to swap it out in this spring, but the actuator arm that I bought just wasn't strong enough to move this thing around. So I'm gonna have to, maybe over the winter, try and see if I can find the exact same one that's up there. It's got to be a pretty beefy actuator, because it's quite a bit of weight that this thing has to move. I did buy a control module that sort of tracks the sun, which would allow the array to kind of move this way or that way depending on or how the sun goes. So here we have the east is kind of past the cabin on that side, and then they're facing directly south right now, and the sun sets somewhere over there. So it would be good. I mean, we would definitely get more power that way. But even so, with these 6 panels, it's been working actually really well. I've only had 4 panels before this spring, and that was not enough. But adding the extra 2 panels definitely changed things around, and things have been working quite well. So, yeah. So those are the panels. You can see there on the post. Is the combiner box. So this just puts all the panels together, and then we have these two wires here that run underground and into the cabin, and those run into that shut-off switch and then into the breaker. So that's the panels, and I'm just gonna do a quick bit on the batteries that we have, and that will be it. So stay tuned for the battery review, or well, battery whatever. Talk about the batteries. All right, so this is the battery bank. So as you can see, we have 8 of these rolls L16 batteries. I believe these guys are 420 amp hours each. And they're connected in parallel and series. They're 6-volt batteries, so we basically have two strings of 4 batteries, and that gives us our 24 volts and 800, I don't know, let's say 850 amp hours capacity. I think if I had to do it all over again, I probably would go with a 48 volt system, just to it would just be a lot more efficient than going from 24 volts to 110 volts. So the power loss is a lot less. Plus, then all the batteries would just be connected in series versus series in parallel. So when you have 2 parallel strings, sometimes you have some trouble with equalizing them properly. They don't all get discharged, the same, and so forth. So you run into those types of problems, which we did, last summer when I was just running with the 4 panels. So some batteries were getting charged and discharged a lot better than others, and I ended up having to move some batteries kind of around and stuff. But yeah, now everything's been running well. As you can see, these are the 4 000 gauge cables, and of course there is a fuse here in this box. It's like a 300 amp fuse that would blow in case something bad happens. But so far our system's been running really well. These are the cables that come from the charge controller, so they charge the battery bank. So as you can see, one's connected to the positive on this battery and then negative on a different battery at the other end of the string. So yeah, it's been working quite well. And then if you're wondering what this is, so I just have one little 12-volt marine battery that I use. It's connected to, we have a wind turbine up there, which doesn't really produce a lot of power, to be honest. It's a 12-volt, really old turbine. It's definitely not high enough. It's maybe, I'd say, 30 feet up in the air. For any type of wind power generation, that thing would have to be twice as high, with bigger blades and so forth. So yeah, it's more just kind of for fun. It was here when we bought the cabin again, so I'm just kind of trying to repurpose what was already here. but it's enough to charge this little battery. And all that battery really does is I have a couple of LED lights here, like floodlights, that we just use at night when we're up here, having a campfire or whatever. So just kind of lights up this area here for us, and for that it is good enough. But beyond that, yeah, this wind turbine is just not efficient enough to produce any sort of useful power. All right, so that's our solar setup. If you have any comments, questions, feel free to leave those in the comment section. Happy to answer. If you're just getting into the whole solar thing, I mean, I've made my share of mistakes and had to do a bunch of research and stuff to learn how all these things work together, and what's good, what's not good. So definitely happy to share that with you guys. And then, of course, don't forget to subscribe for more videos. Hit like if you found this video useful. And I will see you again at the Cozy Cabin. Thanks for watching. Take care.